just to give you background on marketing. All this was on anyone's land kind of call, so we would like this out. So marketing, we have digital, animated digital boards, the door station you may have seen, here, that has a short video that's going to loop. We have billboards. This one, so actually the animated one, Revolutionary Care, the #1 research hospital in America, we're kind of hanging on that. Billboards, we feel like this person, heart center patient, feel like I got my life back after surgery. Platform posters on the commuter rail, similar to that. Also digital display ads for orthopedics. #1 orthopedic hospital program in New England. We're on a lot of social media, and we're also, we do Google AdWords. So very limited budget compared to other companies, compared to other hospitals. We are, it's also limited in terms of, looking at what Mayo's doing, what Cancer Treatment Center of America are doing. So we're doing our best to have that presence, to build awareness in areas that are maybe outside of our primary market, which is Eastern Massachusetts, to build awareness and build that brand saliency so that someone's not thinking about a hospital by the time they do for them or a loved one or someone that they think of Mass General is a place to go to for high-end care. So recently we did some brand work looking at brand descriptors, attributes, and we had a number of them come up were very interesting for us. A couple on the positive side, we had one that was looked at whether people felt that we were unintelligent to brilliant, and it was really on the brilliant side, the best doctors in the country doing their best work, and other clinicians and researchers. A leader in its space. People felt that we were a leader, and that we were, leading in the hospital care space. On the other side, people felt that we were more a cold place. It was daunting. It was a huge place to go to. It's hard to get to, and so it wasn't really accessible, very business oriented. So for a hospital who really prides itself in the care that it provides for patients, this is a bit of a challenge for us. I always wonder, is there a zero-sum game? Can you do both of these really well, or cognitively is there a problem here where you lose a little bit on the super brilliant side if you become more approachable, caring? I don't know the answer to that, but we're going to try to shift that caring, that more approachable, kind of piece. And that's really where this podcast came into place, where we want to show that the personal side of Mass General, and go in depth and show the clinicians and other administrators and other people at Mass General. And so that's what we did. I'm going to turn it over to Caitlin for the next piece. Caitlin's going to talk about the podcast. Switch to the podcast specifically, and some of the structural elements behind it, and then she's going to bring it back to me to finish up.
Thank you. Hi guys. So, like Frank just said, we want to kind of shift some of the brand perceptions a little bit, and podcasts are one of the best ways that we think we can do that. I mean, who in this room has listened to a podcast? Yeah, exactly. A lot of people listen to podcasts, and as you can see, 32% of the US population has admitted to listening to a podcast in the last month. 22% have listened to one in the last week. And that's almost doubled, or more than doubled, in the last 6 years. And it's continuing to grow, and we think it's going to continue to grow in the coming years. So we think this is a great opportunity to kind of get our brand and our message out there. So, what is that message? Well, medicine's actually a really challenging career for women. Even though women make 80% of the healthcare decisions in the US, they are not really represented in the executive less than 40 of first-time authors and journals are actually women, and only a third of hospital executives are women, and even fewer, 16%, are deans. So it's a very male-dominated field, and a lot of the women don't get a say that they're due. And one of the challenges that they face is actually the balance of family and career. A third of women actually consider leaving training because of it, and a quarter of female surgeons actually do leave hospital for that reason. So, along with the challenges, other challenges in this winning one, and the challenging medical career, we thought, how can we combine this into our amazing podcast, which is Charged. So Charged is the name of our podcast, and it's all about uncovering the stories of our relentless daily pursuit to break the boundaries and provide exceptional care. It's of course hosted by the amazing Amy Wicks there, and it's really a place to give the women at Mass General the voice that they don't necessarily have elsewhere. To tell their amazing, compelling, groundbreaking stories, talk about their achievements, all of the research they do, and all the exceptional care that they provide to their patients. We really want to give them a place where they can talk about all of the amazing stuff that they do. Okay. So, the format of the podcast, Amy does a really great job of breaking away from the traditional interview and making it much more of a conversation between two people just discussing the topic of the day. It's around 30 minutes, and within the season, they're released every other week. And the tone and content of it is really driving into those stories of the women, who they are, or who she is, what she does, how she got to where she is, and why her work matters, not just at Mass General, but across the medical industry. And we do that through authentic conversation, really diving into their real thoughts, their real struggles, really getting to who they are. And lastly, the target audience are other aspiring minds and clinical peers. So the goals of the podcast. The first one, the main one that I've talked a lot about, is just telling the stories of who these women are. Letting them have a space where they can tell all of their great achievements, talk about the amazing research that they're doing, and just giving them a chance to talk about how they balance family life with their challenging career as well. The second one is prioritizing female voices. We only interview women. This is a chance, because it's a male-dominated field, it's a chance for the women to get their voices heard, when so often that they're not usually heard or pushed aside. We want to give the women of this community the chance for their voices to be heard. And then lastly is to expand our reach. Right now, as we hear these stories of these women, we want other people around the country, around the world, to want to come to Mass General for their care, because they heard this amazing story and they also want that same quality of care. So we're hoping that that drives them here. So far, we've completed one full season, 28 episodes, and we have a season 2 coming soon. And we also are proud to say that we have downloads in every state and in 6 continents. Just to give you guys an idea of the kind of range of topics that we discuss, so here's a ton of the topics that we go over, from medical stuff like heart and neurosurgery to childhood obesity, to more of the flip side, personal life, talking about how they balance being a mother and diversity and creating their own path in the hospital. So a lot of different topics that we discuss here. And then lastly, here's all the places that it can be found. It's downloaded on any of the popular podcast apps and websites, so it's pretty wide ranging. Let me turn it back to Frank.
Thanks, Gail. So now we've finished up season 1, and as it were, and we're really planning season 2, trying to figure it out. But we still have these questions about who our audience is, et cetera. And so we want to evaluate our success and then plan for the future. We want to try to get ahead of the podcast game. I have a sense that there's a lot of, this is kind of a wild west when it comes to podcasts right now. And there's gonna be some evolution in terms of the structural component, structurally how they're gonna look in the future, as well as advertising. Like that. So we want to try to get ahead of that as much as possible. A lot of questions. We have some data. We have this is just not to show specifically, a lot of data. I'm not going to go through this, but this is the Google Analytics dashboard of our podcast users. And when a podcast comes out, we typically get about 250, 300 people on that, and subsequent to that, we get additional users listening. That's about perhaps what we're getting. And so we have some data internally. One of the things we don't know the age, we don't know the gender. There are a lot of basic questions that we can't get out of some of this data that we really want to know to help us see if we're aligning with some of our target audience, etc. And also give us a sense of what this should look like in the future. So we don't know who's coming to our podcast. We don't know what in their minds makes a great podcast. If they listen to us, what part is really resonating with them? What other parts are kind of the tuning out? How it compares to other podcasts, maybe in the hospital space. Maybe there's other hospitals doing podcasts that we compare to our other industry. What consistencies there might be across different podcasts. So we don't know the impact of our podcast, especially on our brand. This is a tough one to kind of capture, to connect the dots here, but would like, is there some sense of what people are thinking in terms of the brand and shifting their perceptions, solidifying them? Is it moving them towards a more caring, approachable kind of brand that we're really trying to portray? And so we're not sure where to go from here, and so a lot of questions. So some of the research objectives, we're just kind of throwing these out there at this point. We want to understand the primary contributors to the success of a podcast, what matters the most, what's the length, subject matter, the reputation of the organization, etc. To understand who's most apt to listen to podcasts in general. We want to learn how people in general and their target audience, particularly, learn about podcasts. How do they made aware of them? If we were to put marketing dollars towards our podcasts, and I'm sure that we are at this point, where would that be? And we think we're doing a little bit of that, but how do we do more? So we want to learn what the listener profile is, people most interested in health-related content, medical research, women's issues, a lot of things coming to play here. With this content, how old are they, what their education level, where else do they get their information on these topics? How much of this is new information for them? What media do they consume? What do they think of Mass General? A lot to do in one project. I mean, market research usually looks at, maybe one or two problems to solve. These, maybe a couple of tools, a couple of different surveys groups, we can get at some of this anyway to help drive, help us be more intelligent as to how we want to manage our brand and strategize our marketing as it applies to some of these efforts. That's it for me. It's going to be very similar.
So I'll share the revised version of this presentation slides with you. And this event will be recorded, so during the semester you can access to the content, you can watch content again. So, I know that you know the format. So we have multiple sections running at the same time, Martin 20 and Martin 10. So all the teams are working on this General Child Podcast project. You'll be competing with each other, and Frank, Amy, and the team will see only 6 teams, 30 of them. So this is, the stakes are high for this project. So I open the platform to the Q&A, and if you have any questions that you would like to know more in depth, you can ask them right now.
My name is Laura Les. Thank you so much for the presentation. So my question was basically, whenever someone starts a business, they have an idea of what they want it to be like. So when you guys started your podcast, what was your inspiration? Is there a podcast that you looked up to that you want to be like?
You want to take that?
Yeah, I can hear it. Does that feel right? Yeah. Are you able to hear it, Amy?
So this is a project that started with our CMO, and it started, Caitlin had some data up there about, just stats on women in medicine, and kind of anecdotally, people know, women and men enter med school now at approximately the same rate, but as she said, what starts to happen, particularly in academic medicine, is that once women hit their childbearing years, they hit these challenges. Like if you are in your residency and you want to have a baby, residencies aren't built to give you time off for things like maternity leave or breastfeeding, or you got to take your kid to school in the morning and that kind of thing. So what happens is women start to fall behind. Sometimes they drop out, and when it also comes to things like publications, I don't know how much you guys know about academic publications. I've learned a lot in this job, but being the first author or the last author is really important. Those are the two sort of spots that matter, and everybody in the middle is kind of an also-ran. So there's a lot of research showing that first authorships are much more likely to go to men than to women. And so our CMO, she also has this story of one day she's a big sports fan. She was reading the New York Times, and she was open the sports section of the New York Times, and one of the Williams sisters had won like a Grand Slam or something, big deal, and the cover story of the sports section was some high school boy did something in sports, and then the Williams sisters were kind of down in the corner, and it kind of like was this aha moment. And so I'd say the inspiration was this feeling that, we know there can be these gender disparities that exist in the world, and what's something that we can do? We know that we work at this hospital that has, hundreds and thousands of incredible women who are right there with their male colleagues. So what's something that we can contribute to the conversation to try and push that forward? And then I think for us more, personally, it was this opportunity to broaden the reach of our brand, because we know that I don't know how many of you guys are from Massachusetts, but I am not, and I grew up far from here, and I know that a lot of people where I grew up hadn't heard of this hospital. So doing something like a podcast that has both national and international distribution was a good opportunity for us as an institution and as a brand to reach outside of our local market where we are so strong to somewhere that might not have heard of us.
Hi, my name is Colin, and I've been very nice personality. But what's like the main idea that podcast wants to communicate to its listeners?
Yeah, I think it goes back to, there's a statement up there, sort of our rally cry has been this, the daily pursuit to break boundaries and provide exceptional care. So for the very first slide as well that Frank presented, we have these 4 pillars of the hospital, which is patient care, research, education, and community. And so through the people that we're featuring, the conversations we're having, we're trying to expose all of we can't do everything in every episode, obviously, but trying to get a little bit deeper into those. And we have this idea at the hospital that there's this balance between ingenuity and humanity. So we might be talking to someone who does, really crazy technical research, and talking about that, but also showing her human side. So, you know, each of these, because we also know as a brand that people often think of Mass General as kind of, you know, clinical and unfriendly, and so we're trying to, and we know these people personally, and we know they can be really warm and caring and passionate, so trying to convey that along with whatever the topic is.
We've increased the number of videos on our website as well, to show the personal side of Mass General. We've done that a lot, and people, I think that's resonated.
Hi, my name's Mark. Just had a question about the name that you guys have chosen. Was there a reason, what was the reason behind you guys selecting that name and building or changing it? Another question would be, with the target audience that you guys are trying to focus on, are you not trying to target 18 to 33 listeners and just 33 to 55 mid-career professionals and women? I feel like the content may be too broad to try to target women in the medical field as well as 18 to 33-year-olds and the just curious listeners.
Yeah, we don't know the answer to that because we don't know that demographic breakout, but we do want it to have a wide range of users, and so, you know, we are trying to target that. Maybe not so much targets, but more specific age range. In terms of the word charged, where that, I have to defer to Amy again on that one.
I'm trying to think now, it's been a year and a half, 2 years since we picked it, but we had a lot of conversations about what the name was gonna be. We knew we wanted something that was short and impactful. You know, we kept thinking of these names that were really long, but we knew for this space, having something short and concise, and as I said, impactful was important. And we landed on charged. I couldn't tell you now what some of the other options were off the top of my head, but we settled on charged. We liked that it had a lot of kind of various meanings behind it, you know, and it has been something that's resonated with the women that we interview, you know, this idea that, you know, you're excited to do the thing that you're doing, you are charged to go out into the world and do this thing. So I think, you know, when you start out on something like this, you pick, at least for us, we picked it kind of blindly, but I think over the course of the year and a half we've been doing this, we kind of found that it resonates. So I don't know about your question about changing it, that would be a discussion. But yeah, because that's the story behind it. And to what Frank was saying about the audience piece, this has been an ongoing discussion within our team over the course of the last year and a half of, you know, who is the audience, and we really broke it down and had these two different audiences, the younger, you know, we call them the aspiring minds who are pursuing careers in science and medicine, and then the little bit older who would be more of a peer group. And I will tell you, different people on the team have different opinions about which of those should be kind of number one and which should be number two. And part of the challenge is we haven't been able to get data of, you know, we know who talks to us, but that's about it. So it is a question of, you know, we kind of want to reach as many people as possible, but I personally think it's important to identify, you know, this is, we know, the kind of our core group.
The other reason why I like Charge is it really reflects our brand in terms of being a leader and taking ownership of the content that we want to be, you know, driving this content forward that nobody else is doing. So that's it. It gives us a sense of ownership in that and we are charged with.
Hi, my name's Nicole. I know you guys talked about, you touched on the idea of women talking about their issues in the health field and wanting to talk